In this session, we shall focus on right to freedom of the individuals or certain basic individual liberties which have been guaranteed under Article 19. John Milton once uttered that, "Give me the liberty to know, to utter, to argue freely according to conscience above all liberties," because this is the liberty which is the pillar of a democracy. This basic freedom of speech and expression exists over all other liberties because these are essential for formation of public opinion, which is of utmost importance in a democratic country. Article 19 of Indian Constitution guarantees certain basic freedoms. They are 6 in numbers. Article 19 Clause 1 says that all citizens shall have the right to freedom of speech and expression, to assemble peaceably and without arms, to form association or unions, to move freely throughout the territory of India, to reside and settle in any part of the territory of India, to practice any profession or to carry on any occupation, trade or business. Article 19 Clause 1 Subclause F has been omitted by 44th Amendment Act in the year 1978. This particular subclause guaranteed right to property. That is, right to property is no more a fundamental right under the Constitution of India. Let us examine and analyze the implications of these rights. First of all, we must know why freedom of speech and expression is so important. Freedom of speech and expression enable an individual to widen the scope of interaction and share his or her opinion with the fellow citizens residing within the state or outside. It makes Indian democracy far from being despotic. That is, it can make the citizens of India to attain their liberty in a way so that rulers can restrain themselves from becoming despotic. Freedom of speech and expression actually includes right to impart and receive information which contributes to attain freedom to hold opinions. The essence of free speech is actually the ability to think and speak freely and to obtain information from others through publications, print media, through public discourse without fear or favor, without any restriction or repression by the government or any other authority or individual. It is through freedom of speech and expression people could come together to achieve political influence, to strengthen their morality, to help others to become more democratic and enlightened citizens. Freedom of speech and expression is guaranteed by various international conventions like Universal Declaration of Human Rights, European Convention on Human Rights, Fundamental Freedoms, International Convention or Covenant of Civil and Political Rights. The freedom of speech is regarded as the first founding stone of the freedom or liberty. It is truly said about the freedom of speech that it is the mother of all the other liberties. Freedom of speech and expression means the right to express one's own convictions and opinions freely by words of mouth, writings, printing, drawing, pictures, or any other mode. It is one of the basic freedom, most important fundamental liberties which can protect us against government suppression or state repression. As has already been mentioned that in Indian Constitution, the right to freedom of speech and expression is thus guaranteed by Article 19, Clause 1, Subclause A. In a landmark judgment in the case of Maneka Gandhi versus Union of India, the Supreme Court held that the freedom of speech and expression has no geographical limitation. It carries with it the right of a citizen to gather information and to exchange thoughts with others not only in India but also in abroad. Thus, in Uzair Hossain versus Union of India AIR 2003 also, Supreme Court said that freedom of speech and expression includes right to educate and to be educated, right to inform and to be informed. So, this is the very important thing which stands in the basis of freedom of speech and expression. Now, this freedom of speech and expression does not explicitly say anything about freedom of press. But freedom of expression includes freedom of press. How? The phrase freedom of press, though has not been used in Article 19, it is covered under the freedom of expression. Freedom of press is necessary for formulation of public opinion in any democratic society. In a landmark judgment in Ramesh Thapar versus State of Madras 1950, Supreme Court held that freedom of speech and of the press laid at the foundation of all democratic organizations, for without free political discussion, no public education so essential for the proper functioning of the process of popular government is possible. So, the freedom of expression definitely includes freedom of press. It would be relevant here to refer to Dr. Ambedkar, who was the chairperson of the drafting committee of the Constituent Assembly, who said that the editors or managers of press are all citizens of the country. And when they choose to write anything in the newspaper, they are merely expressing their right of expression. He further said that press has no special right which were not to be given to an individual or a citizen. It is further strengthened by Freedom of Information Act 2002. This act provides all the citizens with the freedom to secure access to information under control of public authorities consistent with public interest in order to promote openness, transparency and accountability in administration. As per the amendment in 2005, the law, however, does not allow dissemination or disclosure of any information that affects national security, defense, or any other matter which are deemed to be of national interest. However, freedom of speech and expression is not absolute. They have their own limitations, which are being termed as reasonable restrictions by the Constitution of India. As of now, there are 8 restrictions on freedom of speech and expression. Clause 2 of Article 19 of the Indian Constitution enables the legislature to impose certain restrictions on free speech under following heads. 1. Security of the state. 2. Friendly relations with foreign states. 3. Public order. 4. Decency and morality. 5. Contempt of court. 6. Defamation. 7. Incitement to an offence. 8. Sovereignty and integrity of India. Thus, under Indian law, the freedom of the press do not confer any absolute right to the media. It is similarly subject to certain restrictions. These restrictions are to be reasonably applied in the for security and integrity of nation, for public order, for general health and certain decency and certain norms of decency and morality. In Bijoy Emmanuel versus State of Kerala 1986 case, the Supreme Court has said that reasonable restrictions on these grounds can be imposed only by a duly enacted law, not by any executive action or executive discretion. As I have already mentioned, there are certain restrictions, that is 8 basic restrictions. There are certain other things which restricts Indian citizens from their full and free enjoyment of this right. Government would be entitled to withhold information related to international investigation, national security and public safety, investigation, detection and prevention of crime, internal deliberation of the government, information received in confidence from a source outside the government. Since the Mumbai bombings of 2008, the Indian authorities have stepped up internet surveillance, and it has increased pressure on technical service providers. Nowadays, in India, internet censorship is selectively practiced by both federal and state governments. There is no sustained government policy or strategy to block access to internet content on a larger scale, but measures are taken for removing content that is obscene or objectionable or that endangers public order or national security. In June 2000, the Indian Parliament created the Information Technology Act, which is popularly known as IT Act. It provides a legal framework to regulate internet use and commerce, including digital signatures, security, and certain posting of photographs and such other things. It also covers under it the question of hacking. The Act criminalizes the publication of obscene information electronically and grants the police with the power to search any premises without a warrant and arrest individuals for violation of the Act. In 2008, amendment was made to this IT Act. Now this Act, as amended in 2008, reinforces the government's power to block internet sites, content and criminalize sending messages deemed inflammatory or offensive. In 2011, OpenNet initiative classified India as engaged in selective internet filtering in the political, conflict, security, social and internet tool areas. It said that India is a stable democracy with a strong tradition of press freedom that nevertheless continues its regime of internet filtering. However, India's selective censorship of blogs and other content, often under the guise of security, have also been met with significant opposition. Indian ISPs continue to selectively filter websites identified by authorities. In March 2012, Reporters Without Borders added India to its list of countries under surveillance. India is now being criticized for this sort of censorship. It is said that the national security policy of the world's biggest democracy is undermining freedom of expression. In the name of protection of Indian users' personal data, India is trespassing in the domain of the individual privacy. India is, however, refuting or rejecting accusation of censorship. The government attempts at filtering, however, have not been entirely foolproof, because blocked content has quickly been migrated to other proxy websites. Article 19 Clause 1 Subclause B guarantees right to assemble peaceably without arms. It is a very significant right because it provides democratic space for interpersonal interaction. The Constitution guarantees the right to hold meetings and take out processions. The processions and meetings should be, however, unarmed and peaceful. International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights give recognition to this right to peaceful assembly. This right may be restricted in the interest of public order or sovereignty and integrity of India. Again, reasonable restrictions on these rights may be exercised under Article 19, Clause 3. As per Article 19, Clause 3, the state can make any law imposing restrictions in the interest of sovereignty and integrity of India. The article has also been interpreted and reviewed by the Supreme Court many a times. Section 144 of the subsection 6 of Code of Criminal Procedure can be imposed by the government in certain cases. It enables the government to prohibit the assembly of 5 or more people at a time. Section 129 of the Code of Criminal Procedure authorizes the police to disperse any unlawful assembly which may cause disturbance to public peace. But the government and its police must be continuously cautious against any excess in administrative behavior which may be fatal for democracy, and no such decision should be taken out of any political ill will. Article 19, Clause 1, Subclause C. Right to form associations or unions. The Constitution declares that all the citizens will have the right to form associations and unions. It is the right which helps the process of democratic socialization to take full and final shape. It enhances the capability of citizens to take part in decision making. The right to freedom of association protects the right of all persons to group together voluntarily for a common goal and to form and join an association. The right to form and join trade unions is specifically protected in Article 8 of International Covenant on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights. This right is necessary in all democratic setup. This right is treated as the foundation stone for any democracy. This right is also not absolute. The state can impose reasonable restrictions on this basic freedom in the interest of national security or public safety, public order, the protection of public health, morals, or the protection of the rights and freedoms of others. Article 19, Clause 1, Subclause D. Freedom to move freely throughout the territory of India. It enables free flow of trade and commerce and intercourse within and across interstate borders. This right is also subject to reasonable restrictions. Restrictions can be imposed on this right in the interest of general public. For example, the Honorable Apex Court in state of UP versus Kaushalya held that the right to movement of the prostitute may be restricted on the ground of public health and in the interest of public morality. Article 19, Clause E of the Constitution gives freedom to reside and settle in any part of the territory of India. This article gives freedom to reside and settle. At the same time, it is under certain reasonable restrictions. Unless there is freedom of movement, we know there cannot be the right to freedom of reside and settle. But both rights are simultaneously restricted in certain cases. For example, so far as the Jammu and Kashmir is concerned, we cannot reside and settle in Jammu and Kashmir without the permission of the concerned government. This right can be restricted also in the interest of general public or for the protection of interest of any scheduled tribe. Article 19, Clause G. Free movement and exchange of goods give confirmation to freedom to practice any profession or to carry on any occupation, trade or business. The state, however, may impose reasonable restrictions in the interest of general public, and state may not allow any individual to carry on any profession or occupation or trade or business which is dangerous or immoral. Further, for carrying on any profession or business or trade, certain qualifications may be held essential by the rules of the government. In a nutshell, let's reiterate the clauses of restrictions on these basic freedoms. The Constitution imposes certain restrictions on these rights. I have already told about this. What are these? The interest of independence, sovereignty and integrity of India, interest of morality and public order, and interest of general health. And apart from this, these 6 freedoms are also automatically suspended during a state of emergency. However, it is to be mentioned here that right to life and personal liberty cannot be suspended even during emergency. These were certain basic freedoms, and these were to be conceived of as the pillars of democracy. Only a vigilant citizenry can enforce this freedom in a proper sense of term. Whenever we will be enjoying these rights or will be claiming these rights and will go to the court for enforcement of these rights, we must keep in mind there are certain norms and values which are essential to be followed for actual enforcement of these rights, for not only for an individual but also for the entire nation. These 6 freedoms can remain suspended during national emergency, as we have already said. But these 6 freedoms cannot remain suspended for a longer time. So only a vigilant and constructive public opinion can restore democracy even if it has been violated, as it was the case during the 1975 emergency. So it is on us, the citizens of India, as to how we will go for enjoying our basic freedoms. And that is the reason for which we must know our basic freedoms, we must enrich our legal resource and know our basic rights. And this is how we can strengthen our democracy.